Welcome, welcome. So good to have everybody here at the Web3 Collective, the first event of 2023. Thank you so much for being here. So we're going to give everybody a moment to join. We're going to have a featured guest in a minute here, and I'll introduce him once we get people clicking on. If you are an attendee, we ask that you stay muted right now. We might mute you if you're making some noise, no problem. But yeah, so thank you so much for coming to the Web3 Collective. We're really honored to have you. We know your time is valuable, so thank you for spending it with us. As a quick introduction, and then we'll go into everything as everyone's in. So Web3 Collective was started by myself, Brandon David, these wonderful co-hosts up here. They're changing their name to put the co-host in. When we recognized that we all love to network and love to meet people at in-person events, at Web3 events, but it's really hard to kind of stay in touch virtually, to stay in touch with people that weren't in the same city, to get access to the incredible resources and connections in the big cities. So that's why we created Web3 Collective. So the goal of this organization is to create strong relationships, to have fun, certainly also to be professional and to help grow each other's business. There's a lot of community engagement and meme posting in Web3 that is awesome. It's a ton of fun. Can't speak more to how much I enjoy it. But sometimes as Web3 professionals, we kind of forget to say, hey, like, who do you serve? Who can I introduce you to? How can I help? How can we strategically build business? So that's what we're here on this event to do. So our quick format. So we're going to have Ben, and I'll give him the big hype up intro in a second. Ben's going to do a quick expert presentation. We're going to have co-hosts introduce themselves briefly. And then after about 20 minutes from now, we'll move into small group breakout rooms. So let's get rolling. All right, so it is with honor that I am pleased to announce Ben Kromnick. So Ben is with DealMaker. I'll let him introduce himself in a moment. But what I was so honored to have him is because in my role, working with Web3 founders, there's a lot of, not only there's just a lot to learn from the fundraising perspective, any founder, even outside of Web3, there's a lot to learn on how to truly raise and truly put together the correct financials and structure things right. But in Web3, that gets a lot more complicated because we have regulations, we have new technology, we have business models and people being creative in new ways. So it's difficult. It's difficult when I'm working with startups to give the right advice, and I have to point to experts and lawyers and everything. So when Ben and I connected, I was like, aha, this would be perfect. So on that note, Ben, I'm going to turn it over to you. Introduce yourself and take us away.
Hey everyone, it's a pleasure to be here. And Benny, it's great to work with people that acknowledge the challenge in front of us, right? So like, we're going to make Web3 actually happen. It is a huge hill to climb. And one of those hills to climb right now is in the regulatory space, and as it relates to how we finance these projects. So, you said you and I immediately connected on, what the future of Web3 fundraising can look like, and what it looks like to bring it into the regulated space. So that's what we're going to talk about today. A little bit about me and my background. So my background is in product management. I like building products for people. I love kind of giving the analogy that the thing that motivates me the most is when I see something working a certain way and it just needs to be better. There's a desired experience out there. There's a future that we can imagine. We just can all agree like that's how it should be. I kind of dive head first into that and try to make the world kind of piece by piece look the way at least I think it should be. One of those things really is fundraising. And the reason that I feel that way is I got started in big publicly traded tech, building like big data and machine learning systems. And it was really great. And there were some problems I didn't get to solve by doing that because I didn't get to own the thing. So I went and started a couple of my own companies. And every time I did that, I went through the fundraising challenge. And every time got beat up. And sometimes we succeeded, sometimes we failed. But as a product manager, as a product person, as a modern technologist, I saw the incredibly antiquated, old, inefficient way that we raise capital traditionally. At the same time, I was watching the crypto and Web3 space take off in like 2014 to 2018, and seeing all the efficiencies there that were gained. Now, a lot of that operated outside of the traditional capital frameworks, and I was trying to raise capital inside of the traditional capital frameworks and having some successes and some failures. So I really, after building a couple more primarily healthcare technology companies here, if anybody here is interested in health tech or the application of big data, machine learning, and healthcare technology, whole other conversation. Happy to have it. But after kind of reaching the end of my rope in that world, I really thought the next space I want to go transform is the capital fundraising experience, and bring all of the technologies that I got to use in building massively distributed healthcare technology and communications and insurance and fintech systems into the traditional capital structures. So I had my own equity crowdfunding platform for a little while, which was really fun. That took off. And then we ended up shutting it down. And we ended up shutting it down primarily because brands need to own their entire experience, need to own their communities, right? Web3 is all about how do we create and leverage communities to scale our businesses and to scale the impact we want to see in the world. So I went away from the marketplace model and kind of went back to square one. Like, what's the right way to facilitate brands raising capital from their communities? And please remind everybody to mute yourself if you're not presenting. So then I joined this team at DealMaker, where they are the Shopify of regulated private capital markets. And this model seems to be the one that's working. And I say that because we've raised almost $500 million this year, or in 2022, through our platform, from brands that you would know. We're gonna talk about one today, like the Green Bay Packers. Other brands that you will know over time as they start to take over certain industries, like Miso Robotics, which is the leading restaurant robotics and automation platform. Two companies that we haven't heard of yet, who are just wrapping up their friends and family around, and they're going to start taking off. And when they take off, the people that succeed with them are going to be their fans. It's going to be their community, in addition to institutional investors. So that's what we're going to talk about today. So what does that look like? How do brands utilize that? So I'm going to share a quick case study here, which is not that one yet. We're going to talk about the Packers. I love football. I grew up playing football, and I always knew the Green Bay Packers were owned by their fans. It was one of their calling cards. One of my best friends as a kid actually owned actually had a stock certificate of the Green Bay Packers. And so when they wanted to issue some more stock last year, the Green Bay Packers came to us. And they basically said, we need a provider who can actually support our massive fan base. Green Bay Packers are the most valuable sports teams in the world, with millions of fans all over the country and all over the world. So they needed someone that could really support that kind of scale. The same way we think about Web3, same way we think about token offerings or NFTs, like you'd be able to distribute thousands or millions of these at scale and then actually keep them on a regulated ledger. DealMaker has all of that same technology. This is very much like a Web 2.5 approach. Sorry, I'm also at CES right now if I get interrupted. So what you're seeing is companies really acknowledging that there are platform approaches to raising capital. The Green Bay Packers came to us to do this. And they came to us because we're the only provider out there that can support a community at scale like that. Just like we want to do with Web3, just like we want to do with NFTs. So, it's something that we didn't do with the Packers, but it's part of a number of projects we're doing now and in 2023 is integrating Web3 solutions like NFTs, like tokens that create that belonging, that create that digital identity that relates to these brands that are scaling. And you're the Green Bay Packers, you're able to reach 175,000 people in 3 months to raise $65 million, which is pretty incredible. But we work with the biggest brands to do that. And this is one of the things that I'm now really evangelizing moving into 2023 is how do we enable the Web3 community to leverage this kind of scale that they're used to, but do it in a way that is regulated, do it in a way that is compliant, so that you can do an IPO, so that you can go take big institutional investor capital later on in your life cycle and maintain that compliance. And you can still use all the benefits of NFTs and tokens when it comes to the community management and the community engagement. but do it in a legal way, in a compliant way. So Green Bay Packers are a perfect example of that. But if you want to see what, and I'll actually drop a link here to this case study so everybody can see it. And then other one here, just take a look at some live campaigns that are out there, like Liquid Piston. This is the sort of experience that you can create to sell equity in your projects online, totally digital experiences, totally digital pipelines and engagement, using rich video content, using, really engaging, beautiful graphics and imagery the same way you would raise for typical Web3 projects, except the actual acquisition, the actual thing that gets purchased, it ties that person to a royalty, it ties them to an equity ownership or debt, is managed as a regulated security, because that's what the SEC requires, right? That was the ruling that came out in 2022, was essentially that if a token represents an equity investment or an investment into a business, it qualifies under one of the regulated security exemptions, either Reg A or Reg CF or Reg D 506C. So DealMaker works with companies to understand those regulations, understand how to structure their offerings. We also have a massive partner ecosystem that helps companies figure out how to structure that offering and take advantage of the community-based business model. So whether that means offering I would kill for an Aaron Rodgers football card that actually has a secure ID in it, that when I go to the game, that actually acts as my ticket, or it acts as my VIP pass that gets me into experiences that only shareholders get. You guys can probably think of 1,000 other use cases just like that I'm happy to talk to you all about. I'm happy to share kind of what some of the structures are here. But more than anything, I really want to help the Web3 community, bridge this space now. Like, this was a really transitional point for this community, and it's players like DealMaker that know how to navigate the existing capital structures and can have the kind of technology scale that's required to meet the requirements of what the Web3 community that is massively distributed and is complex. And there's only a few players out there that can do it. DealMaker is one of them. There's others as well that we can talk about. So excited to get into the breakout rooms with you all. Excited to share the information with you. We'll be some follow-up stuff too. So I'm happy to take any questions. I think we have about 10 minutes for questions. Or Benny, tell me what to do.
Yes, we do. So if people have questions they want to drop in the chat, and we'll go for a few more minutes. Yeah, we got 5 minutes, and then maybe a few over if the answers go a little long. Anybody have anything that they want to do? And please put it in the chat, and Ben will ask it. I'll give people a few seconds. I've got a few. If people don't, I got a few that I think are really interesting. Anybody?
So yeah, first one here, do you work with startup companies? Absolutely. Now, typically with DealMaker, the economics make sense once you're raising more than $2 million. Raising less than $2 million, there's other ways to go about it. Happy to share what those are in the breakout room or in a follow-up email. But yeah, absolutely work with startups. The companies that have the most success with us doing more broadly distributed sales are companies that have a product in market with a user base that they're trying to grow. And they actually want to use the equity offering as an incentive to grow the user base or to grow adoption of a product or growth in community. So that's typically where you find the most success. Second one here, how do you offer a token sale? To my knowledge, you have to be an accredited investor. So they do not need to be an accredited investor if you file the security under the Reg CF or Reg A exemption. Under either of those exemptions, accredited and non-accredited investors can acquire equity in private companies. And then the token that gets issued is technically done under what the SEC called a perk. Perks are really just anything you want to tag on. It's just like selling a t-shirt. That t-shirt happens to be on a regulated distributed ledger that might get you access to certain things, but it does not, very specifically does not represent the equity ownership. That equity ownership is represented by your space on a registered shareholder list, which is managed by DealMaker, because we are a registered transfer agent, which is by law how you have to maintain this list. Next question here is, thank you for the presentation. Is there an incubation play with DealMaker, and what's the cost to participate? For the cost, it varies. And it varies primarily on the type of fundraising you're doing. So if you're doing a non-marketed, private investment, that's very affordable. It's typically about a $3,000 upfront cost, and usually less than $1,000 a month to offer that. If you're doing a big $75 million Reg A financing mini IPO, that's typically a $35,000 upfront cost plus $2,000 a month, and then a 1% success fee. There's additional costs that go into that, mostly related to accounting and legal. I'm happy to, again, dive into kind of the full cost breakdown there. And I don't know what you mean by an incubation play. There are other questions. I'm going to move on by that. And if you want to follow up, hit me up in the breakout room. Next question here. Do you work with UK-based companies, and do your investors invest in token and equity mixed offerings? So absolutely work with UK-based companies, work with actually global companies. So right before this, I was on call with a South Korean company. It all depends on the type of offering you want to do. If you are a UK company selling equity to UK businesses, then you fall under UK jurisdiction, and we have to do whatever is compliant there. If you are a UK company, you want to offer an investment to US-based investors, that's what's called a Reg S. We do that all the time. So we can help you think through exactly how to structure the offering and what the compliance requirements are there. And then do our investors invest in tokens and mixed equity offerings? Technically, every single investment on DealMaker is a exempt security offering. If that exempt security offering comes with a token, fine, that is wonderful. It's technically a perk to the purchase of either equity or debt, or it's some sort of an exempt security offering. Technically, a token is not a actual security. Lastly, here, how do companies understand what can be done and that it's not always out of the price point? Good question. How do they know what can be done? So usually it comes from just having a conversation with someone on our team or with a securities attorney to understand what their breadth of options are. Comes to price point. Every company has a different price point. The thing to think about with a marketed fundraise that I typically think of is 20% total cost of capital is usually the target you're going to shoot for. So if you're looking to raise $10 million, you should expect to spend $2 million in marketing. And let's get one more question. I think for some reason, Zane is getting the upvote here. So does your platform have investors already to send our decks as deal flow if you want to raise on your platform? Great question. So because DealMaker is a self-hosted platform, which means that we're not a marketplace, and we're also not we're not like a broker dealer that's going to go out and find new investors necessarily. However, we do have a marketing agency that does this. So while we are not going to go to our list of investors and send your deal to them, we do have a marketing agency that is by far the most successful in the industry, raising more than $300 million in the last 3 years, doing marketing fundraisers. We have all the audiences pre-developed. Now, typically, we're going to work with much larger campaigns. So that's more in the $5 to $50 million range. So if you're looking for something smaller than that, there are other partners we would send you to who also have their own pre-developed audiences. And the reason we don't do that is you wouldn't want us sending another company to your investors. We operate like Shopify, right? Shopify is not selling, what company A's customer list to company B. So we're not going to do that to you because you own these investors. These are your communities. We are simply their infrastructure to go leverage them. I'm sure I missed questions here, and I'm sure these answers are far more sophisticated and nuanced than you can get across the next 60 seconds. So come to the breakout room, or you'll get my contact info as well. I'll follow up with you.